Today on our 2018 Jeep Wrangler JL Unlimited, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Demco Tablas base plate kit, part number DM9519336. So here's what our base plate is going to look like once we have it installed. This is going to be our attachment point that's going to attach our tow bar to our Jeep so we can safely flat tow it down the road. It is going to be a Tablas design, so we're going to have a section that's going to go into here and lock down. We can simply rotate these covers and pop them out. So when we do want to tow, we can take our arms, we'll put them in and rotate them until it goes into a locked position. And then we can secure it with a pin. Now whenever we're not towing, we'll pull the pin out. We can rotate the arm, and it'll slide out, and our arm is actually going to be bolted directly onto our tow bar, which has a few benefits. One, it'll keep the front of our Jeep looking nice and very minimal sticking out, but also we're not going to have to worry about losing this tab. Our base plate is going to bolt directly to the frame of our Jeep, so it's going to spread out that towing force more evenly, taking some of the strain and stress off of our front suspension. And the textured black powder coat is going to blend in nicely on the lower part of our Jeep, also while protecting the metal. The distance between our two attachment points is going to be 19.5 inches. And from the ground to the middle of our attachment point is going to be 18.5 inches. That measurement's going to come in handy to make sure you have a nice level setup so you can check your hitch on your motorhome and see if you need a high-low adapter. Our base plate is custom designed for our Jeep, so it's going to minimize the amount of drilling and cutting that we're going to have to do. But as you can see, we are going to have to cut the plastic shield underneath in order for our base plate to come through. But there's not going to be any welding required at all. Now our Demco base plate is going to be compatible with all Demco tow bars, as well as other manufacturers' tow bars with an adapter that is going to be sold separately. To begin our installation, we're going to need to remove our front bumper. So if we come just right behind one of the tow hooks on the front here, right in front of the grill, we're going to have a couple fasteners, one on each side. There's going to be a push pin holding it in place. You're going to want to grab a trim panel tool or a flathead screwdriver and come underneath the center section of that push pin, just kind of popping it up a little bit, and that'll take the tension off the push pin. Then we can reach down and pull the rest of it out. We're going to pull each one out of both sides. Now on the bottom of our bumper, we're going to have this splash shield, and along the front edge here, we're going to have several of these push pin fasteners. So again, we just grab a trim panel tool or a flathead screwdriver, we can pop those out, and you're going to want to pop all of these out. We'll have 6 along the front edge, and then on the outer edges there's going to be a hole, and if we come behind it we can pop the other one out on each side. Now just like the ones up top, they are going to have 2 sections. We're going to have this inner section, and you'll see that they are going to be shaped. You want to pop the center section out first, and then we can take out the outer area. And we'll do that for all of our push pins. Now if we move back just a little bit from those push pins, we're going to have 2 bolts that are holding it in place. So we can grab an 8mm socket and pull those out. And once we have the hardware removed, we can slide the splash shield just a little bit back and we can pull it out. Now if we come behind the bumper with the splash shield out of the way, we can see exactly how it's going to be bolted on. We're going to have 2 nuts on the inside and then 2 more exactly like it right on the outside of the frame here. We're going to pull those 4 nuts out, but we don't have to worry about the bumper coming off because it's still going to be bolted on right here in its place. But we're going to take those 4 nuts off on each side. So we'll grab an 18mm socket. And it helps if you get a small extension so we can break them loose. Now, right on the outside of where our frame and our bumper meet, we'll have a bolt, and we're going to have another one that's going to be on the inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen this bolt up, but leave it in so that the bumper doesn't fall down. But we just want to loosen it up some so that we can easily take it out by hand later, and we'll remove the bolt on the inside of the frame on both sides. But we are going to remove the bolt on the very inside of the frame here that's attaching the bracket. And we'll be using a 16mm socket for all of them. So we'll pull that bolt completely out and then remove the bracket, and we'll do that on both sides. Now it's a good idea to get an extra set of hands, and we're going to slide our bumper outward. Now you don't want to pull too far away because we are going to have some electrical connections that we're going to have to disconnect. Over on the passenger side, we're going to have a connector. That's going to be for our fog lights. You'll see it's going to have a little gray tab. You want to push in on that tab, and then we can pull it out. And with those disconnected, we're going to gently pull our bumper away and set it aside where it won't get damaged. Now the bracket we removed from the inside of our bumper beam and frame here, we're going to put back in place. And for now, we can just put it in by hand, making sure we don't lose it. You can see how it's slotted. You just want to make sure that washer is on the outside of the bracket and the front holes line up with the bumper beam here. Now if we move to the outside, we are going to remove the outer bracket and the bolt, but we want to make sure that we hold on to the bolt because we are going to be reusing this but not the bracket. Now on the inside of our kit, we're going to have some thick washers. There are going to be a couple that are going to be thick like this, so you want to grab the smaller of the two. We're going to take these, and on the back side, on the outer part of the frame here, where we took our bracket off, we're going to tape these right directly to it. We can put it directly over the washer. We're going to tape it, lining up the holes on our bumper bracket. Now we can always go back and cut the tape and poke a hole through. You just want to make sure that they're not going to fall off. So don't be afraid to use a lot of tape, and like I said, go back and poke a hole through the washer, making sure the hole is exposed. Getting those washers to stick with tape can be a little bit of a hassle, but I found the easiest way to do it is if you put your washer on the back side, grab some tape and just wrap all around the frame, and then come back and make sure you cut out both sides of the tape so you can have a bolt going through. Now with an extra set of hands, we're going to lift our base plate into place. We're going to come underneath our bumper, and we're going to take these tabs and go behind our washers. We're going to lift it up, and sometimes it helps if you take a screwdriver and kind of put it through the base plate to make sure it's all lined up. And then on the side here, you want the hole to line up with the threaded hole, and we're going to reuse that bolt that we took out earlier. And you want to make sure you get that bolt in at least hand tight so the base plate won't fall down. Now on the side of our base plate, just below where we put our bolt in, we're going to have another hole. It's going to line up with the hole that's in the frame. Now this is going to be a rather large bolt we're going to be putting in, and as you can see, it's not going to line up perfectly, and even if it did line up, it's going to be a little bit tough to get that bolt into position. So I'm going to take a file and I'm going to grind out the part of the frame here and enlarge the hole a little bit, making it easier to get that bolt in. And once we can get the bolt to go through easily and not have to worry about it getting bound up, we're going to take our nut plate and we're going to be inserting it into the bottom of the frame, opening right here. You're going to want to go up through the frame, and we're going to line up the plate so that the hole lines up with the nut on the inside. And once you get the nut plate lined up on the inside, we can take our bolt. We're going to start it threading it in by hand, making sure it's catching that nut plate. Now before we fully tighten any of our bolts, you want to make sure you put a little bit of Loctite on the threads. So if you need to, just loosen them up a little bit so we can get some blue Loctite on the threads. Make sure it gets on there. And we can always come back and just tighten them up. But you want to put blue Loctite on all the bolts and nuts. We're going to come back and tighten all our hardware up. For our 1/2 inch bolt at the bottom here, we'll be using a 3/4 inch socket. And then for our bolts up top, I'll be using that same 16mm socket. Then you want to make sure you come back and torque all of your hardware down to the specified amount in the instructions. Now with the base plate in place, we're going to have to trim our lower plastic shield in order for those tabs to come through. Now in the back of your instructions, you are going to have a template for the driver's side and the passenger side. And there's going to be a line on there. You're going to want to line that line up with this embossed section right down the middle. And you're going to want to do it from the inside of the cover, so when you're looking at it, the outside or the bottom is not going to have the template on it. So we'll tape our template down, and then in the corner here, they have a spot where we can drill it out with a drill bit and then trim it out. So I'm going to take a small drill bit. I'm going to drill through all 4 corners on each one of my templates so that we have a spot to put our tool to cut that square out. Now with our 4 holes drilled, that'll give us our perimeter. And you can take the template off or you can leave it on, but we'll have the perimeter we need. And then I'm going to come back with a rotary tool and I'm going to trim out that section. Now the key to this is you just want to go real slow and take your time, because we can always come back and trim more if necessary. So now that we have this side trimmed, we can always come back and clean up the edges, and then we'll go ahead and trim out the other side as well. So with both areas trimmed out, we can go ahead and double check our cutting. We're going to want to slide it over our base plate and kind of swing that plastic shield back underneath, because if you remember these tabs, they're going to line up with these metal tabs underneath. So we'll slide it in and make sure that they're lining up and make sure that the mounting holes line up. But for now, we're going to leave this on but very loose so we can get access to our bumper beam bolts so we can get everything back in place. Now with the next set of hands, we're going to put our bumper back in place, but make sure you plug in your fog lights before you get it too far in so we can't access it. Make sure it locks in. We can line up the studs on our bumper. And we'll slide it back on, and then we can get all the hardware back in place. Before we attach our splash shield underneath, we're going to need to put our permanent safety cables in place. So we'll take one end with the loop. We're going to go over the cross member or the frame. You just want to be careful when you are passing it through, because you remember that our fog light connection is going to be over here. Now we're going to have it pass through so it goes directly around the frame here. Then we can take one of our quick links, go through the opening, and then kind of tie it back onto itself, and we'll tighten it up. You want to make sure that quick link is fully secure and tightened all the way up. Now once we have that one end done, we'll pull the slack out of our cable so we have enough to work with on the other end. Now we're going to want to wrap this end around our base plate and do the same connection with a quick link here. So we'll go over the top here, grab it behind the center section on our base plate. And we can always bring it back up and secure it to the cable up here with another quick link. You just want to make sure that you're wrapping around the base plate and a separate section of the frame. In case anything were to happen, the safety cable will keep them attached. Then we'll come back with an 11/16 inch wrench, and I'm going to tighten up my quick link to make sure that it won't back off. And we'll do that for both the quick links, and then we'll go ahead and make sure that we get the other side on as well. Then we can put all of our hardware back in that was holding our splash shield down. With our push pins, you want to make sure that center section is out. We'll push in the outer section and lock it down by pressing the center. Now with our base plate in place, we can take our electrical bracket And you'll notice that it's going to have 4 holes on the top flange here, and that's going to line up with the outer section on our base plate. So we can either put it over on the driver's side, or we can bring it over to the passenger side. You just want to make sure that it is pointing towards the center, because we don't want to have our electrical bracket way off to the side. We're going to take the included hardware, we'll drop it down through our base plate. Just take one of the bolts, and we'll line it up with the holes in our electrical bracket. Then we'll take a lock washer and a nut, and we'll secure each one of those bolts down. And get it at least hand tight, that way the bracket won't fall off. Then we can go back and put the rest of the hardware on and tighten it up. Now I'll come back with the 7/16 socket and wrench and tighten up the hardware. That'll finish up your look at the Demco Tablas baseplate kit, part number DM9519336 on our 2018 Jeep Wrangler JL Unlimited.